You know, in this path you hear a lot of stories of renunciates and brahmacharyas and, swamis and people who had great attributes from very early on in life and who led a life of utmost purity. And that really hasn't been my life at all. At least it wasn't in the days before meditation and spiritual practices. The woman who introduced me to my first experience of Sudarshan Kriya, I met in a bar, and we had a relationship. And during that relationship, she said to me one day, "Hey, I've just heard of this course called the Healing Breath Course. I saw this flyer at the library. I've took it down. Look," and she gave it to me, and I looked at it, and I saw the words there, healing breath, and I saw this black and white photocopied flyer, and I thought three things. I thought, what an unprofessionally printed flyer. I thought, number two, I don't need healing, and number three, I already know how to breathe. So those were the first three thoughts that went through my mind when she showed this to me. But I liked her and I didn't want to cause friction, so when she suggested that we went to this introductory talk, I said, yeah, let's go. And so we went. And you know what? When I went, I had this concept in my mind because I'd done meditation. Tick. I'd gone to these meditation courses. Tick. I'd done personal development. Tick. I had even done 3 different types of breathing techniques. Tick, tick, tick. I didn't need a fourth. I was done with that stuff. I was on a different path. That was a previous chapter of my life, and I was into nice cars and earning good money, and I was working in an IT company, and I had a good manager position, and I was on that path, the path of success, not the path of flaky people doing yoga and things like that. That was my past. So I really wasn't keen. I went along, and when I heard the person giving the talk talking about being in the present moment and being here and now, I was very much like, yeah, I've heard it all before. I know it already. But something unusual happened. She had with her 3-year-old daughter. That was because her husband was supposed to arrive at the same time, but had not. So by the time her husband arrived to take her daughter and occupy her, the daughter was clinging to mummy's side. And so she gave the entire talk over the course of half an hour with her 3-year-old daughter at her side, doing what 3-year-old children do. "Mummy, have a look at my picture. I drew it for you. Look, it's got you and all these people." "Yes, that's wonderful, dear. Yes, I can see." Now, however, by that time in my life, I had a 6-year-old child myself, a 6-year-old daughter. And I was watching her, and the actor in me came out. And I thought, oh, this is going to be fun. I didn't expect this scenario. How interesting. Here's a woman giving a talk about stress elimination, and courtesy of her husband, he's provided her a situation of great stress, which is she's now got to occupy a 3-year-old child and all of us at the same time. So with that slightly Machiavellian sense of drama, I started to become very intrigued in how this is all going to go. But I couldn't see a crack in her. I thought, wow, this person's a very good actor. She's not becoming stressed at all in the face of this daughter's constant interruptions. And I became utterly uninterested in what she was saying. I was just watching the sideshow of her and her daughter interacting, and her interacting with all of us. That was all that I was focused on. And I was watching for a chink in her armor. When's she going to let up? When's she going to get stressed? What must she be thinking in her mind? What argument is she going to have with her husband afterwards? How dare you put me in this situation? I have to talk to a room of people, and I have to talk about stress elimination and pretend to be unstressed while I've got this 3-year-old here because you couldn't come in time? But there was no evidence that she was thinking any of that. She was faultless. She was either the best actor I'd ever seen, or maybe, just maybe, she was actually living what she was talking about. She was fully in the present moment. And then this radical thought occurred to me. Maybe she's just really present. Maybe she's not just talking about being present. Maybe she actually is. And that seemed to be a more plausible explanation. She was being totally present with us, totally present with the child, then she'd come back and be totally present with us again. And then she looked me right in the eye and she said, "So, Daniel, are you doing the course coming up?" To which I said, "Well, I can't do the next one because I have a show," which was true. I was an actor at the time and I was launching my solo show. That was the other thing that I was doing, which I felt was very significant and important at that time. And then she interrupted and said, "Well, what about the next one?" I said, "I'll do the next one." Now, whatever my faults, I was a man of my word. So I knew that the moment I uttered that I had no choice but to follow through. But I felt compelled to follow through because I'd actually seen something in her that had touched me that I had not yet seen in myself. And that was the ability to be really present with my own child. And I thought, if there's even a possibility that I could be that way with my child, I want to find out. And I remember what occurred years earlier when, as a result of my stepmother, we shared this in an earlier story, right? I'd prejudged something and I thought, no, let's give it a go. Let's give it a fair shot. Afterwards, I'll judge. And so I did. And I went along to this course, and day 1, day 2, back in those days it was over 6 days, and they were nice, but I wouldn't say it was life-changing. And then on day 3, we did Sudarshan Kriya for the first time. And, I'd done 3 other types of breathing technique before, but it was nothing could prepare me for what I was about to experience. I felt 7 years of grief for the loss of a loved one leaving my body. I could feel it being pulled from every cell. And that person was my own firstborn child, who had died of a heart tumour when she was just 6 weeks old. And I'd had counselling and this and that to help me get over it and get back to normal. But I'd always felt like part of me had gone with her. And perhaps that was why I was on this different kick where I was trying to be successful on the outside, even though inside I still felt this hollowness, this sense of loss that nothing in life seemed to be able to mitigate. And yet here I was, experiencing this breathing technique, and I could feel this grief being pulled, being extracted. And as it was being extracted, I was crying. I was a mess, and I was getting tissues given to me, and it was very cathartic and very abject. But when it was complete, I felt a sense of peace that I had never experienced before in my life, even through deep meditation. And I felt that all I had for the loss of my child was gratitude, not grief for the lost years, but gratitude for the time I'd had with her and gratitude for the gift that she'd given me. The experience of freedom that I felt in that moment. There was a Māori woman who was next to me, and when we finished this Kriya process, she came up to me and put her arm around me and said, "Oh, you were grieving for your lost tamariki, weren't you?" Tamariki means child. And in fact, I think she even said it was your daughter. And I said, "Yes, my lost daughter." And she said, "She's here with you right now." I said, "Yeah, I can feel her." She said, "Yeah, there's this amazing kind of pink colour energy." I said, "Yeah, that was her colour. Her name was Heather Rose. And Heather is pink and the pink rose, and we had those colours with her always." She said, "Yeah, she's with her. She's with you right now." And I could feel it. Even though I hadn't had many of those kind of so-called spiritual conversations for a very long time, it felt like the most natural and normal thing in the world. And I knew that she was with me. And I didn't feel separate from her anymore. And I never have to this day. And to this day, from time to time I've felt sadness, but I've never felt that same grief, that same emptiness. And literally that grief transferred into gratitude. And years later I found out that our chakra, our throat chakra, that's exactly what occurs, and that was the mechanism through which that grief was removed, through my yelling and shouting and catharting. And that what happens is when the chakra spins in one direction, it's grief, but in the other it becomes gratitude. And that chakra had actually come into balance and started going in the right direction. I didn't know that's what had occurred at the time, but that was what occurred. That was how powerful that one breathing technique was, that it could totally rebalance one of the main energy centers in the body, But even without that explanation, which I didn't need, it's just an extra layer, I could feel the difference. I felt happy again. And from that point forward, Sudarshan Kriya means you get a proper vision of who you truly are. And I think until that point in my life, I hadn't actually known who I was. And I'm not sure I completely found out immediately afterwards, but I got a glimpse of it. I got a glimpse of that potential. I got a glimpse of that complete expansiveness and expandedness, which stayed with me, which I hadn't experienced through meditation. It stayed with me. Eventually it died out when I stopped doing my practices, but it stayed with me for a good 2 months. And I became a very different person. So that was how I was invited into my first ever, what was called the Healing Breath course back in those days, and then the Part 1 course, and now the Happiness program, and now we've got online meditation and breathing workshops. But that was how it all happened. So, it can happen in the strangest ways, and I certainly wasn't what you call a sincere seeker at the time. My motivations for doing it were out of a combination of Machiavellian entertainment and curiosity. But even with that lack of sincerity and intent, something so good could still come with it. Just because of one thing. And that again was that intention. Let me withhold judgment and let me see. Let me experience this before I judge. And again, my encouragement would be, let this be an operating system for your life as well. Experience first, decide second.